Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Jasmine. I'm an area redevelopment manager here in the Department of Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization. The presentation you're about to view goes over some of the changes that will impact our notice of funding availability for developer programs. Recently, the program underwent some changes, and this presentation will cover how the changes will impact the application and then the administration of the program moving forward. So this slide gives an overview of what you can expect for the presentation today. First, we'll do a background of the program itself, then I'll cover the changes that will impact the NOFA moving forward. We'll review the administration changes, and then discuss funding updates and how the rest of the year would look for the NOFA program. So the purpose of the NOFA program, or the New Construction and Substantial Rehabilitation Program, is to provide financial assistance to developers across the city of Dallas, either for new construction or substantial rehabilitation of existing property. The assistance is used to incentivize the investments in affordable housing that is both high quality and sustainable. On June 12th, both the New Construction and Substantial Rehabilitation Program, or the NOFA program, and the single family and homeownership development requirements and underwriting were amended. So the first amendment codified the allocation of 50% of all of housing's resources to our newly identified equity strategy target areas. The amendment also added caps for the amount of funding a developer can receive and added preferences for developers who have no current outstanding projects with the city. It added incentives in the form of preferences or additional points for single family development or the development of homeownership units. And then lastly, the amendment simplified the repayment terms for developers of rental housing. These are housing's equity strategy target areas, or ESTAs for short. And again, 50% of all of the resources in the department are dedicated to these three areas, at least for the next 5 years. So, how will that impact the NOFA? The projects that fall in these areas might be preference, might score higher, receive additional points, things like that for their applications. Also, they might be looked at as part of larger neighborhood revitalization strategies when their applications come through. So again, 50% of all of the resources available in the program would be targeted to these three areas. The changes or amendments that went into effect also impact funding caps. So now developers are capped at 25% of their total development cost or $5 million, whichever is less. Now, there are some exceptions to this cap. First one being if a project is in the target areas. So the target areas we just looked at, this cap doesn't necessarily apply to those applications. Also, if the development proposal includes a partnership that is part of a specific project initiative. For example, if there is a city-owned site or a city-owned property that's specifically been identified for development, or if the project or the proposal includes a partnership with entities like DART, Dallas Housing Authority, DISD, things like that. The changes to the NOFA also added preferences and additional points, opportunities that were not there before. So it added a preference for developers who have no current or outstanding projects with the city. So for example, if two applications come in, they're similar, they're requesting similar funding amounts, or we get a bunch of applications back to back to back, developers with no outstanding projects would be preferred over developers who have several projects open, maybe that they haven't delivered on yet. It also added an option for additional points for applications when developers are developing single family detached projects or when they're developing homeownership units. And those can look, a variety of different homeownership units, but homeownership specifically. And then also added additional points for developments in the equity strategy target areas. The amendment also simplified and modified the repayment terms for all developers of rental housing. So now annual surplus cash payments would be required on all repayable loans, and at least 50% of eligible cash in excess of $50,000 would be required to be paid annually to subordinate lenders on a prorated basis. So that's the changes to the application itself. These are some changes in the administration of the program. So now for all developers, underwriting fees would be due at the time that the project is selected to move forward. So it would be required to be paid upfront before a project actually begins its underwriting stage. Also, all developers would be required to pay legal fees upfront within 10 days of the project being approved by council. The fees would be held by a third party attorney. And of course, if there was any difference owed or due, it would be settled at the time that the agreement is executed. The one exception to this would be our CHODOs. So the community housing development organizations, those that are certified as such, would be provided financing in the form of a forgivable loan. So those repayment terms wouldn't apply. And also CHODOs, the changes would allow them to retain the proceeds from sales of single family units developed through NOFA when and if those proceeds that they keep are reinvested into developments that are serving households up to 80% of the area median income. This is a timeline sort of update, some key dates to be looking out for the rest of the year. So on October 1st, we actually start a new fiscal year. So that's the time when the budgets reset, funding resets for all departments here at the city. We anticipate getting updates about our bond funding and resources that'll be available from the bond that passed at some point in November. So that'll give an idea of funding amounts, dispersal dates, timelines, things like that. Moving forward, housing staff will be updating the NOFA website by the first day of each month in advance of the pre-submission meeting for that month. So then developers are already coming into the meeting with an idea of resources that are available if it meets their needs and where we're at with funding, in advance of submitting their application. We will be resuming pre-submission meetings here in September 2024, so just a couple of weeks away. At that time, staff will go over the new application. We will discuss new scoring criteria, any new administration changes, and answer all of your questions. So definitely plan to attend that meeting if you're not planning to do so already. We will resume those pre-submission meetings the fourth Tuesday of every month. So hope to see you guys there. In the meantime, if you have questions, please email housingnofa@dallas.gov. Thanks. See y'all soon.